In today's video, we're going to be breaking down Travis Hunter of Colorado. This guy is dynamic. He's both a cornerback and a wide receiver. What do we think his strengths and weaknesses are? How do we think he's best deployed, at least as a wide receiver? And finally, what do we think he's going to be at the NFL level? A cornerback strictly, a wide receiver strictly, some combination of both? And based on some of these potential outcomes, what do we think we can expect from him in fantasy? Watch to the end of this video and you'll have a good idea. Travis Hunter is listed as 6'1", 185 pounds here on PFF. I do think that both the height and the weight are reasonably accurate, but I will be curious to see how he weighs at the combine or potentially his pro day, because I do think that will be a data point that we want to keep track of, because I do think that could potentially impact some of his success as a wide receiver at the NFL level. In terms of his age, he's 21 years and 6 months old, and so he is a true junior, and so he's going to be 22 during the entirety of his rookie season. And we do like our wide receivers to be on the younger side, and especially early declares. That is a predictor of success. There is correlation there. In terms of his statistics, as a true freshman, he was at Jackson State. I will say he is both obviously a cornerback and a wide receiver. And so for him to really be doing anything as a wide receiver and a cornerback is incredibly impressive. Champ Bailey comes to mind, for instance. But as a true freshman, he was primarily a corner, but he did see 22 targets. He caught 17 of those for a 77.3 reception percentage. That is very efficient. And as you can see, he's been efficient every single year. It's rather incredible, honestly. He had 187 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns as well, with a PFF receiving grade of 85.8. That is incredible. And he really stepped up in his sophomore season at Colorado. On 73 targets, he had 57 receptions for a 78.1 reception percentage, 721 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns, with a PFF receiving grade of 78.9. And so that's a quite impressive jump from his freshman season to his sophomore season. Once again, also adding the context that he was playing cornerback as well. But as a true junior, he really stepped it up. And if he wasn't even a cornerback and you saw some of these stats, you would be thoroughly impressed, which makes it all the more impressive. He had 121 targets, 96 receptions for a 79.3 reception percentage. That is ridiculous efficiency. 1,258 receiving yards and 15 receiving touchdowns with a PFF receiving grade of 89.0. And as I've mentioned in previous videos, we really want to see the progressive growth here, and the jump in production from season to season is ridiculous in his case. Looking into some advanced stats here, among draft-eligible FBS wide receivers with 75 plus targets, once again, that's a sample size of 84, Hunter ran 502 routes this season, which was 93.1% of the team routes, which, when you consider the context of him also being a full-time cornerback, is ludicrous. Looking at his deployment, this season, he played 5.6% of the time in the slot and 94.4% of the time out wide. But I want to mention, in 2023, he played 64.3% of the time in the slot and 35.4% out wide. And so he's had the ability to play anywhere on the field as an X, a Z, or in the slot. And so positional versatility is not going to be an issue in any way, shape, or form with him. In terms of his yards per out run, his 2.51 are tied for 29th in this sample size of 84. His PFF receiving grade of 89.0 is 6th. That's impressive. His yak per reception of 4.9 is tied for 126th. And so you might think that he's not the best after the catch, but then you look at his missed tackles forced, and his 24 are 7th. He is amazing after the catch. His contested catch percentage of 64.7% is remarkable, and he was 11 out of 17. And so, at least at the collegiate level, not only is he a good receiver, but he's even good in traffic. Looking at his targets, his 121 were 9th, his 96 receptions were tied for 2nd, his 1,258 receiving yards were 3rd, and his 15 receiving touchdowns were 2nd. And so not only was he a dominant cornerback, he was an absolutely electric wide receiver at the collegiate level as well. Delving into his ability to beat man and zone specifically, his PFF grade versus man of 73.6 is 50th, and his yards per out run versus man of 2.17 are 65th. Since he's a cornerback, he understands defensive leveraging, and he knows how to alter his releases at the line of scrimmage depending on the defensive alignment, and that really does help him against man coverage. He's really good at the stem. He moves defenders off their spots. There is no issue, despite him not being elite in terms of his PFF receiving grade and yards per out run versus man. His ability to beat man isn't going to be an issue. In terms of his PFF receiving grade versus zone, his 86.6 is 2nd, and his yards per out run versus zone of 2.72 or 25th. Against zone coverage, he understands the defender's drop depth, as he plays cornerback once again, and he alters his routes depending on the depth of the cornerback, whether to go behind them or in front of them. It's really impressive stuff. His IQ is potentially unmatched in terms of, as a receiver coming out as a prospect, being able to play cornerback and understanding what the cornerback is most likely thinking each and every single time really does help him. Now, his PFF receiving grade on screens at 54.0 is tied for 136th. I don't think that he's bad in terms of following his blockers. I do think there are better prospects, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. And I do think that teams are going to want to use him in the screen game because he's so good after the catch. His PFF receiving grade in the slot of 91.1 is third. And so, like I said earlier, he did play about 94% of the time out wide and 5% in the slot, but he did play a lot of slot in 2023. And so he has really good positional versatility, and he is good no matter where he's lined up on the field. And in terms of first downs caught, he had 55, which is tied for 5th. And so getting to the grades, remember that he's a true junior out of Colorado. He's give or take 6'1", 185 pounds. I do want to make note of the weight when he's officially weighed into the combine or his pro day. Now, my evaluation of him, I think he is worthy of the number 1 overall pick. It is incredibly rare that we have somebody that is both an elite wide receiver prospect and an elite prospect at cornerback. It's almost unheard of. My comparison, in terms of as a wide receiver, I think he compares reasonably well to Garrett Wilson, but a better athlete. His change of direction is better than Wilson's. His stop-start ability is better. His after-catch ability, in terms of his ability to spin around and make defenders miss, his spatial awareness, I don't know if I've ever seen a receiver prospect with his level of spatial awareness, especially when you marry that to his ability to understand zone or man coverage by the defense because he's a cornerback. It's otherworldly. Now, as a cornerback, I think he compares to Patrick Peterson. The ball skills are better than Patrick Peterson's coming out, and Patrick Peterson had insane ball skills. Closing speed is insane. But once again, this isn't about him as a cornerback, but make no mistake, he is just as good or potentially even better as a cornerback than he is as a receiver, and he is an elite receiving prospect. In terms of his official grade, he ended up with a 91 out of 100. That is an elite prospect. He is the second elite prospect, at least according to the model in which I use, that we've seen in 2 seasons. That is how good he is. In terms of his short route running, I gave him a 5 out of 5. His footwork is impeccable. His ability to make sharp cuts, not give away what he's doing, his understanding of the defense, breaking their leverage, using it against them is unmatched. His footwork, once again, is incredible. In terms of his medium route running, I gave him a 4.5 out of 5. Just like with the short route running, his understanding of defensive leverage and finding soft spots in the zone is unmatched. I will say I have seen a couple reps where he does have a little bit of wasted movement, but he can clean it up. And it honestly, it doesn't even impact his ability to get open because he is such a good separator. He's such an incredible athlete. As you can see with some of these agility and athleticism metrics below, he's an incredible athlete. And so I think he's going to clean it up at the NFL level, and there's really not that much to clean up. As far as his deep route running, there are no issues here. Straight 5 out of 5. He's going to be able to stack vertically against most NFL corners with relative ease, in my opinion. In terms of his double moves, he's going to be able to run out and ups, sluggos, stutter goes. He's going to have no issues with double moves. His change of direction and agility is going to help him out massively there, as well as his understanding of defenses. In terms of his releases, I gave him a 3.5 out of 5. And that might sound low. This is the reasoning. In terms of off coverage, he's going to have no issues. He can use the diamond releases to get the leverage that he wants, split stance releases, no issues with his release package in and of itself. I do think, though, that there is the potential, especially on the outside, and this is specific to him playing outside, that against physical press man coverage, I think he could potentially get bodied. But the thing is, if he gets around to the press coverage and his route isn't altered, it's a wrap. You are screwed as a defense. Good luck. He is going to toast you. And so that is going to be a very dangerous game against him at the NFL level. Try it if you want to. I think it's a bad idea, but I do think that if he is able to be pressed, he is going to be taken out of the play, at least momentarily. In terms of his speed, I gave him an 8 out of 10. He's going to be able to stack vertically. I have seen faster wide receivers. I don't think he's not somebody like Brian Thomas Jr., who's able to continuously create separation after the catch in terms of in a linear fashion between the defender behind him. I don't think he's going to be able to continuously make up ground between the trailing defenders, but he obviously has enough speed to get it done vertically, and he's going to house some long catches as well. In terms of his acceleration, I gave him an 8.5 out of 10. He is a very quick accelerator. I have seen better, but he is one of the best in this class. And when you combine his speed and acceleration with his deceleration, agility, and change of direction, that is where the Garrett Wilson comp comes in. His ability to decelerate is on par with that of Neighbors, and that is something I really value because on the vertical plane, your ability to run those curls and sell vertically down the field and stop on a dime is so important. Once again, with the vertical plane, there is going to be no issue, and he brings the fear that players like Neighbors do. And so, in my opinion, when he's facing off coverage, he is still going to be able to separate because his threat of going deep is that scary. His agility and change of direction. After the catch, if you play Madden, he has the grab and go effect where once he gets the ball, especially horizontally, he can stop on a dime, turn completely around, juke you out of your shoes. It's insane. He is a human joystick. He's catching 5 out of 5. He hardly ever drops the ball. I believe I saw 2 or 3 concentration drops, but in the grand scheme of things, there's no issue there. In terms of his catch in traffic, at the collegiate level, it's elite. His ball skills are insane. Traffic really doesn't mean much of anything. I do project, though, at the NFL level, if he's really, 6'1", 185, I do think that some of these more physical cornerbacks and safeties, if they're able to get into the play, are going to be able to dislodge the ball in contested catch situations. But it's still really, really good. And once again, this is a projection of what I think it's going to be at the NFL level. And so as far as his run after catch goes, I gave him a 4.5 out of 5. When it comes to changing direction suddenly, juking people out, spin moves, he's going to have no issues at the NFL level, and he's going to be quite good at that. But I don't think he's going to be physically breaking that many tackles, given that I think he's right around 6'1", 185. And so I'm going to deduct him a half a point there because I don't think he's going to bring some of the physicality after the catch that some of these bigger guys are able to do, but it's still great. In terms of his dog factor, straight 5 out of 5. Anybody that's able to be an elite cornerback and wide receiver prospect, somebody that's fearless over the middle of the field, that's something I didn't mention yet. He is fearless. And beyond being fearless, part of the reason why he's able to do so is because he's able to understand what the defense is going to be doing, where they're going to be. His spatial awareness is so good that he has such an advantage that there's no reason for him to be afraid. In terms of his analytics, I gave him an 8 out of 10. Now, when you contextualize it with he's playing cornerback and receiver, any receiving statistics at all is incredible, right? But purely in terms of looking at his stats as a receiver, his true freshman season from a counting stats perspective wasn't that incredible, really. As a sophomore, 700 yards is good, but players like Tet and Neighbors, for instance, had over 1,000. And then as a true junior, his stats are fantastic, so nothing to dock him for there. And so I give him an 8 out of 10 there. But once again, it's incredible that he's able to even be a receiver at all, let alone an elite prospect, considering he's an elite cornerback. In terms of his projected draft capital, I think he's going number 1 overall. There have been reports that Tennessee is not going to avoid a generational prospect. And while they didn't name drop him, I think we can probably guess as to who the generational prospect is here, right? And so I think he's going number 1 overall. There's no way he slips out of the top 3. No way. In terms of his X, Z, and slot ability, I gave him a 5 out of 5. I think he's going to be good all across the board. Like I said, the only issue I worry about as an X specifically is his ability to beat physical press man coverage. I do think he has the potential to get taken out of the play and have his routes disrupted. But once again, if you miss, you're screwed. Now, as far as his worries, can he handle press coverage? I've said this a couple times. That is something I'm cautiously optimistic about, but I don't want to just give anybody, no matter which prospect it is, the benefit of the doubt if I do have legitimate concerns. But more so than that, how much receiver will he play? As far as for fantasy football purposes, that is the most important thing. Because if he's a full-time receiver, regardless as to how much cornerback he plays, I think he's deserving of the 101 in terms of among wide receivers. If he plays, say, 70% of receiver snaps for his team, you could maybe argue Tet potentially over him, once again, depending on landing spot. If he plays 50% of the time, I do think I'd rather have a couple wide receivers. And if he plays less than that, it's hard to really trust him, in my opinion. And so I think how much receiver he plays is the really the biggest and in general the only thing we really need to be worried about. And so where does Travis Hunter fit into the grand scheme of things in terms of prospects in the 25 class I've delved into, as well as the 2024 class? Well, in my opinion, he is one of two receivers that I've graded so far that deserves to be in the elite tier of prospects, at least according to the model in which I use. And so he is going to be half a point behind Malik Neighbors, but it just so happens to work out that way. If you believe that Hunter is a better prospect than Neighbors, I'm not even going to disagree with you. There are some IQ aspects to his game that Neighbors just does not have because he's not a cornerback. And if you want to have one over the other, it doesn't matter to me. They're both elite prospects. And so I do consider him, at least according to this prospect model, a tier above the Harrison Juniors, Ted McMillans, Odunze's, BTJs, and Burdens. And in my opinion, Travis Hunter is the clear wide receiver one in this class. Now, is he going to be a wide receiver full time? Is he going to be a cornerback full time? It really is tough to say. If he is a wide receiver full time, I think that he could potentially, depending on the landing spot, be deserving of the 101. It'll also matter where Genty goes as well as team need. But this guy is going to be a special wide receiver at the NFL level. If he is a full-time cornerback, obviously you won't be considering him unless you're maybe in an IDP league. If he's the majority of the time a wide receiver and sometimes a cornerback, it once again will depend on how much he's used at the NFL level as a receiver. But let's say if he's used, 70% of the time as a wide receiver and say 30% of the time as a cornerback, and it may not work out like that either. I think that he could still be a top 5 pick because he is so incredible that even in limited usage, I think he would still get requisite volume. If it's a 50-50 split, I think that he might be trending towards a mid to late first round pick. And obviously, if he's less than 50% of the time as a wide receiver, it'd be really tough to roster him, to be honest with you, because he would be big play dependent. But yeah, he has all the upside in the world. And if he were to become a full-time wide receiver, I do think that he could potentially be deserving of the 101. And so once again, I think that he's give or take 6'1", 185 pounds. I think both the height and the weight are reasonably accurate. But like I said earlier, I do want to see him weigh in at the combine or the pro day to be sure about that weight. Because like I said, I do think that it could impact his ability to beat press coverage on the outside. But if he does beat the press coverage, the defense is screwed. You're screwed. And so once again, he's a true junior. My evaluation, he's worthy of the number 1 pick, no doubt. There is no question about that. He should go in the first round, first overall this season. My comparison, he's like Garrett Wilson once again, but a much better athlete. Basically, Garrett Wilson coming out, but everything about him is a little bit better, especially his football IQ. And once again, as a cornerback, I think he compares reasonably well to Patrick Peterson. The ball skills are tremendous. And he graded out as a 91 out of 100, which is as an elite prospect. And I want to give a special shout out to my Patreon members. Thank you to Big Hunt, SP, Major Jack, and Infamy MTG. If you would like to become a member, I'm going to leave a link in the comment section. As far as what you'll gain, you'll get access to a private Discord server. I'm going to have a real life and fantasy football chat where we talk about real life NFL news. Any questions you might have will be answered in the real life NFL chat. And as far as the fantasy football chat, we'll talk about what's happening in the fantasy world. I'll give you team reviews, give you optimal roster construction based on your specific league settings, trades you can make to strengthen your roster, buying and selling points, specifically price points for various players based on your positions of need. I'll give you a special shout out, obviously, on all of these videos. You'll get early access to videos. You'll be part of private live streams that are not available to regular YouTube members. And you will also have the ability to suggest videos specifically for you on Patreon. I've already made one on Isaac Rendo as per request by one of my Patreon members. And so once again, if you would like to join, the link is going to be in the comment section. Thanks.